the one part that stood out to me, and you kind of already mentioned this, that Billy Carson claimed, oh, the crucifixion didn't really happen, Gospel of Barnabas. And that was one question that Joe Rogan asked you. Like, isn't it possible if we believe that the resurrection happened, isn't it possible that he just didn't die and that he almost
Hmm.
died, but then he woke up and that he walked around and everyone thought that he rose from the dead, but he didn't really. And I just thought that your response was very straightforward and compelling. So, can you kind of just debunk that, this idea that maybe Jesus was just in a coma and he didn't really rise from the dead?
Yeah, I think this is what's typically been referred to as the swoon theory. It's
Mm.
whether Joe Rogan knew it or not, and I don't think he was actually necessarily advocating for that.
Yeah.
But this is an argument we hear amongst groups like Muslims, who, because of the Quran and the fact that chapter 4, verse 157 denies the crucifixion in a very vague way, some Muslims have come up with the theory that Jesus actually survived the crucifixion, and that because he survived the crucifixion, he was then, in the tomb, recovered, and when his disciples saw him afterwards, uh, that he was, then the not resurrected, but just recovered Jesus. And the problem with that is that, and this is what I explained to Joe, is we know a lot about Roman crucifixion in the sense of what takes place, and we know that the Romans were very good at it. And so you have the data of broader, historical evidence of what takes place in a Roman crucifixion, but then you also simply have what took place in the descriptions from the biblical gospels. And nothing about that description indicates that Jesus would have been alive. In fact, if on the off chance, let's say, that what we see described in the gospels did take place and Jesus didn't die, if you put him in the tomb and he survived and his disciples saw him afterwards, there is no way they would have come to the conclusion that he was in a resurrected, glorified body. He would have been
Mhm.
so beat up and
Right.
so tortured that, and I jokingly said to Rogan, the first thing you say to your disciples is not "peace be with you," it's "get me to a hospital,"
Mhm.
because that's the state he would have been in. But undoubtedly, and I don't think there really is any question historically that Jesus survived the crucifixion, given all that took place. I mean, it literally says that the reason they didn't break his knees like they did the other individuals, the thieves on the cross, was because he was dead. And then, they stab his side, and out comes blood and water, once again indicating that there was death that took place.
Mhm.
And so I referenced a JAMA article to Rogan, the Journal of the American Medical Association, where there was actual an investigation done by medical professionals and historians on looking at the description in the Gospels about coming up with a conclusion as to how Jesus may have died medically. And the conclusion was undoubtedly, well, he did die. So there's no qualms about that. But how, if we were to say diagnose it, how would we do that? So there's historical data, there's medical data, there's lots on the side. There's just the face value understanding of what takes place in Roman crucifixion, and the fact that if Jesus had not died, then it would be the Roman centurions who are on the hook, and they would have been put to death. So there's just a cumulative case that
Mhm.
takes place in terms of something like denying that the crucifixion actually happened in the way that it happened. It goes beyond the bounds of just simple intuitive understanding.